We have 3,000 hours with our kids. 3,000 hours. Look at that number. That's a lot. And I mean, that's taking out sleeping, eating, work, all that stuff. Still, 3,000 hours. So in that time of 3,000 hours, kids in your family page, you see kids have 3,000 hours with their parents. In that time, something's going to be impressed upon you. What if you spent 3,000 hours with this guy? Don't stare directly into that. It might hurt you. But think about that. This dude is a Mavs fan. This dude is a Mavs freak. He knows everything about the Mavs. If you spend 3,000 hours with this guy, aside from needing medication afterwards, I believe that you will know everything about the Mavs. You'll know all the stats about the Mavs. You'll know how poorly they're playing in the playoffs. But you'll know all their stats and how Dirk put up, 12 or 14 in the first round of the playoffs, all that stuff. You'll know all that. You'll also know how to communicate it effectively. All those stats that you got, you'll be able to know how to do because he's communicated it to you. You'll also probably have sort of a passion for the Mavs because this guy obviously has passion for the Mavs to be able to get up in front of thousands of people and wear that, okay? So you would have a passion for the Mavs. You'd be so excited, all right? And then you'd also probably at the end of spending 3,000 hours with the kid, all joking aside, you'd probably have a love for the Mavs. You would. So some of you guys know where I'm going with this. What if you spent 3,000 hours with a Jesus freak? What if? I bet you know a lot of the stats about Jesus. I bet you know where everything is in the Bible. You know what Jesus said. I bet you know how to communicate it pretty effectively to other people because you've heard it communicated by this Jesus freak. I bet that you would know, you'd have an appreciation for Jesus. And I bet you'd love him with all your heart and soul. So, the discipleship part is easy. We are constantly impressing. And God has a plan for your family in the story, and it's to be a discipleship center. I want you to turn in your Bibles just to grab just how God kind of had this from the beginning. We're going to go grab your Bibles. There you go, very good. We're going to look in the very first book of the Bible, which is Genesis. And we're going to go chapter 18. Genesis chapter 18. And we're just going to look at verse 19. I talked to you about Abraham earlier, right? The Abrahamic covenant, right? Abraham, father, Abraham had many sons, all that. Yeah. Abraham, the father of this people, God chose him for a specific reason, and he says it right here in verse 19. Verse 19 of chapter 18, he says, "For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he promised him." You see, he chose Abraham to be the person who's going to ultimately shepherd in God's people and ultimately shepherd in the Son of God. He chose Abraham not because Abraham had this great frame, this tall frame, and he was going to make great basketball players. He didn't choose Abraham because Abraham was a good engineer and he knew that his children would create these great spaceships for NASA and people could just fly to heaven in a spaceship. He decided to go with Abraham because Abraham lived in a just and right relationship with God. And God knew that Abraham would tell his descendants and create all these other people around him to be like him. You see, God has his own little pyramid scheme, right? He wants you as an individual to love him with everything in you, but then the next step, if you just hold on to that, he knows, he's not dumb. If you go, oh, I'm going to just hold on, I've got this great faith, and I'm going to come here, I'm going to just sit. This is going to be wonderful, me and you, God. It's going to be great. No, God is like, no, I didn't tell you all that junk so you can sit there and do nothing. You got to tell other people about it, namely the people right there in your midst, the people right in front of you, this family that I've given you, this construct of family that I've given so much power to and created from the beginning. These are the first people you got to go after because it's easy. It's right there. I made it so easy. You get filled up by God, and you fill other children, however many you have up, and then they get filled up with God, and then they go and have more children, and then they have more, and then these children, and they fill up other children, and it creates this whole race of people, ultimately, that are following God. God's discipleship center. You know, this idea of discipleship, I think when we start talking about it, and we hear what Moses is saying there, we start looking at this, impress them on your children. I think for those of you who have kids in your house, this is pretty easy, right? You're like, oh, this is a little easier. I've got them there. But some of you guys are like, okay, so what, Marcus? What is in it for me? What am I supposed to do with this command that says impress them on your children? I'm single, I don't live with my family anymore, or my kids are out of my house, or they're about to be out of my house, and now I'm having grandkids and all that. Look, when God said at the beginning, when Moses told him at the beginning, he said, "Hear, O Israel." God was not talking to just the parents. He was talking to a nation of people. And I like to use impress them on the children in your midst. The church has to play a key role in impressing and transferring the faith that we hold so dear to the children in our midst. See, this covenant that we're under in now is different than the covenant that the Israelites were working under. They were in this old covenant with Abraham, and the expression of that old covenant was the nation of Israel. But we are in this new covenant, Marcus, so I don't have to do that. No, that's wrong. But you are in a new covenant. Everybody is available now. God has opened it up and said, I will take anybody who wants to love me. The church is now an expression. The body of believers is now the expression of this covenant. And we're asked the same way to take care of the children in our midst in two ways. The one is the church partners with the parents, and we try so hard to partner with you guys here. And I will tell you, some days it's very hard when you've made an effort to try to put resources and opportunities into the lives of people to impress them on the children, and people don't use them. It's very disheartening. I'm just being honest. I'm being authentic. We have a class coming up next week, very intentional parenting, talking about internet safety issues. We talk about this. We've been working on it for months. We're going to have an FBI agent out there who's going to talk about the dangers. We're going to have Steve Duvall's going to come out and talk about some of the things he's done to help create barriers to keep his kids from getting the things they're not supposed to. And then we're going to talk to you about what if they do get through that, how do we as parents connect with our kids in such a way that they make the wise choices. And we're going to work really hard, and I really hope that some people are there to hear that. Because it is a great opportunity for you to figure out how to do this, what God is saying, impressing your faith on your kids. But we as the church partner. And we as the church, some of our singles and our empty nesters, some of our older folks, God does not tell us just because you have kids or maybe you've done your duty, as some people say. I heard a lady say, my kid's 18, I've done my job. I said, no, your job has just changed. But God never says in the Bible, okay, as soon as your kids turn 18, they get out of your house, you're all done. No. Impressing upon your children is a lifetime thing. You do it all the time. Even if your kids leave your house and you've got other kids in your midst, like your grandkids, you impress upon them. Even if you don't have grandkids and these other kids are in your midst, you impress upon them because, especially if you're older and you've lived all this life and all this wisdom, it's a great chance for you to transfer this faith and to expand your legacy even outside of your own construct of family. Great opportunity. I went to a Messianic Jewish synagogue yesterday. I will tell you, it broke me. It broke me down many times. I don't get broken down many times, but I sat there and watched. If you don't know what a Messianic Jewish synagogue is, it's basically this old covenant that's Jews that we've talked about. They've got that in their DNA of being Jewish, but then they also have accepted the fulfillment of who God's Son really is, Jesus. They recognize Messiah as the Jesus that we worship. And to sit in the presence of these folks who have this legacy of faith that has been passed down for centuries, and how they connect it to the truth of what they've been waiting for so long. It blows your mind. You know what blows your mind? It's for about 3/4 of the service. All they do is impress the commands on their children. They do this kind of choreographed dance that they go around and they do all this expression of dance. I'm not doing it justice. They do it. It's amazing. And I sat there and watched this, and I watched this 7-year-old little African-American boy, so it spoke very closely to me, step into line next to probably this single adult male. He didn't look like he had any kids or a wife. He was just in there doing his stuff. This male, he's very cool, got the goatee and all this stuff. And this little kid was trying to figure out what to do. And this guy looked over and he just showed him, here's what we do here. And this kid was trying to figure out, he wasn't getting it all right. But this single guy took a moment to impress upon the children in his midst how we worship God, leaving a legacy. And then this next part I couldn't even describe to you. So I'm going to let the video tell it.